Hello, everyone, and welcome to Panorama Consulting Solutions review of the 2019 Top 10 Distribution Systems Report. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Cristobals. I'm manager of software selections here at Panorama, and I've been in the ERP space for over 15 years now. I started off on the reseller side, implementing a handful of Tier 2 and Tier 1 type applications, and then came over to Panorama as a consultant in my about 5th year now here at Panorama. And again, thanks for joining us today. At the end of the session, we are going to be giving away some free consulting time slots, 1-hour time slots to the first 3 respondents. So look forward to that, and hopefully go to our website soon after this to get registered for that free hour of consulting. What we're going to do today is just go over a brief introduction to the report itself. We're going to go over some of the criteria that establish the report. We'll jump into each of the vendors, give some high-level information, a little bit of more detail around functionality as well, and then we're going to review some questions that come in along the way. So just a quick briefing about Panorama. So we're a management consulting firm. We specialize in the areas here on the left-hand side are our different service offerings. So you can see everything from digital strategy all the way down through IT staffing. Change management is a large portion of what we do and very important throughout these ERP implementation projects. And then obviously technology and selection from a service standpoint. From an industry standpoint, these are a list of industries that we commonly work with, manufacturing and distribution being a large portion of our kind of bread and butter over the years. We have a lot of professional service engagements. We do a lot of work with government entities and nonprofit. We've done a handful of healthcare selections and process optimization within retail, energy, agriculture, and then food and beverage as well. We've got a great base of clients, a global base of clients. All of our clients are very skilled within their specific industries and skill sets. We've got Six Sigmas, MBAs, we've got PMPs, and then certifications from Apex as well. I myself is a certified supply chain analyst from Apex. These are a sample of our clients over the years. We've got many manufacturing and distribution, and see a handful of others promoted in through out there. The biggest thing here is we work with all sorts of different size clients. We have clients that are multi-billion, $20 billion and up, and we have clients that are also in startup phase with no revenues. So Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 companies, we can certainly help facilitate with any of our project service offerings. This is just a quick sample of some of the ERP system and supply chain management applications we work with. Here again, Tier 1, Tier 2 type products. We also have some point solutions that are made for supply chain management distribution specifically. Now we'll jump into an overview of the report. In the report here, the analysis is based on past client experience as well as data from Gartner and other reliable sources. The vendors have been divided into 3 sections: Tier 1, Tier 2, and point solutions. So we'll go over that. And then the strengths that we've listed aren't exhaustive. We're just highlighting some of the differentiators that the vendors are kind of claiming for themselves. We'll also go over the size of the implementing clients as well, kind of who are the target customer for these vendors. So we'll get into that we'll get into that definition of what the tiers are for this report purposes. So we've broken them out: Tier 1, Tier 2, and point solutions. So Tier 1 providers are vendors that facilitate the business management software applications for large enterprise organizations. Typically, these organizations are $1 billion and above. Tier 2 applications, Tier 2 vendors facilitating the business software management applications for mid-sized companies. We put a range here starting at about 10 million on the lower end and up to 1 billion on the higher end there. So that's the small, mid-size type range that we're looking at. And then for the point solution providers, these are vendors that are just advanced niche functionality, could be used as a standalone, could be used to supplement ERP limitations. And these vendors will go over who their target markets, typically tier 1 and tier 2 is usually where they play. So starting off with the tier 1 distribution vendors, we have SAP and the S/4HANA application. So you can see SAP, obviously a very large organization, almost $30 billion in itself. The biggest thing about that is their research and development. So the stability of SAP is obviously there. They're not going to be acquired by anybody. And their applications really aren't going anywhere. Very, very viable vendor. Their target customer is typically $1 billion plus. So the SAP products, the tier 1 products, can be implemented in smaller organizations than $1 billion, but typically it's about $1 billion range on the low end there of organizations, usually leading to complexity and higher requirements, more in-depth requirements, just an enterprise type application management. So there's just a quick snapshot of what we see. You know, SAP sees as some differentiators there. Again, the S4 is deep and rich and very good and strong in functionality. Has a lot of out-of-the-box configuration, you know, not out-of-the-box standard processes, but more out-of-the-box type configuration is kind of what we look at when we're taking a look at these applications and what their functionality is, what their limitations are, you know, out of the box versus some third-party components or even another product within the family. But deep integration end-to-end for SAP S/4HANA and full, you know, full WMS capability as well there. Some of the product highlights, they've really streamlined that user interface for SAP. Historically, there was a lot of information that was presented on the screens, and they've kind of dumbed it down. They've made it a little bit more intuitive for navigation. So there's a lot better end user adoption. The system is just a little bit more intuitive than it used to be. And then as far as the application suite, it is a full end-to-end application suite. So again, out of the box, deep, rich functionality that can be configured. And then a full product set of suite, you know, a suite of products if we need additional transportation, additional asset management type applications there. And what we found with SAP is, you know, being so complex and a little bit risky to implement, we found that system integrators and companies like us are really breaking down SAP implementations into functional areas and phases. That way we can start to realize benefits as we put in the application, not necessarily, you know, waiting 3 years for a full implementation to realize benefits. SAP is implementing in a manner that can be, you know, a little bit more realized as you go, benefits that is. Some of the considerations there, again, just because of the deep complexity, very technical to implement. Obviously, you're going to need a system integrator with, you know, particular experience in your industry that will help reduce the risk of implementation and ensure your, you know, your go live success there. From a customer experience and culture, SAP, you know, one, they're again completely innovators, completely innovative type company, and they do a great job at the management level of hiring industry leaders. So these are people that have been within industry for a long time, whether it be ERP or, you know, distribution, transportation, whatnot. They help them, these type of people help them see what's actually going on, you know, kind of on a boots in the ground matter, and help them deploy new functionality within the system. And we've also found, you know, the customer experience very relationship based and very partner centric. So they work very well with their system integrators. SAP and that system integrator will come as a team, making sure that their product is represented in the best light, and you know, leading you to the best chances of a successful implementation. Next one on the list here is Oracle, obviously another large tier 1 vendor. Almost a $40 billion company, a little bit more of hardware and other type of applications go into that than SAP. But again, still obviously a very viable, one of the top vendors out there in this space, and not going to be acquired by anybody there. The target customer here, we listed as 750 million and above there for annual revenue. We put that a little bit lower than SAP. SAP really typically targets those large, big enterprises, and Oracle certainly scalable to work with Fortune 1000 enterprises, but not as complex as some of the other products out there like SAP. So therefore, they can they play a little bit in the lower realm, but still big organizations. Large companies, are their really target market. And then a couple of differentiators here. Of course, Oracle is still consolidating their product offering into the cloud suite, into the new Oracle Cloud apps. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And then as far as that consolidation goes, the Oracle Cloud applications are a consolidation of the best practices. In theory, they were taking best practices from JD Edwards for manufacturing, possibly some projects in there as well. They were taking best practices from Siebel for CRM. They were taking best practices from the PeopleSoft and the Oracle HCM, the Oracle HR component, and all these best practices are lining up into a consolidated cloud application that is one more end-to-end type ERP system. So some of the considerations that we come across doing our selections and analysis of Oracle Cloud is that not all the niche functionality. There's plenty of functionality that is there. And many organizations are implementing Oracle Cloud, but some of the little nuances may not have been brought over from EBS, maybe from a financial side, and or JD Edwards from from a manufacturing side. So they're still making leeway, and every day that product is improving. From a customer experience and culture, again, they're innovative. They hire a lot of industry leaders, kind of the same way, a little bit less focused on, I would say, true partnerships with their SIs. This is just what we see in our selections. But they do have a very good partner program. They have many, obviously, different levels of certified partners that are doing the new cloud applications along with their historical products as well there. Next tier 1 vendor is Microsoft, and it's Microsoft, the D365 enterprise application. Want to highlight, 90 billion in revenue as a Microsoft vendor, so very large. You kind of start to peel back the onion on what their business software management division looks like, and it is certainly smaller than the other two big guys, but they're making a lot of leeway in the market space still. The target customer for Microsoft, the D365 enterprise application, we've labeled that at approximately 500 million and above. Certainly, we see organizations that are smaller than that, 100 or 200 million, that are implementing the new D365, but typically organizations about 500 million have the complexity and the need, more of an enterprise need. The new D365 is the old Microsoft AX, but it's completely rebuilt in the Azure stack, the Azure technology platform there, and it's opening many new doors for Microsoft as well. Their partners are a little bit behind the curve and figuring out where their IP, the intellectual property that these ISVs have added on to really bring the last mile of niche functionality. They're a little bit behind the curve in reestablishing that. Since it is such a new application, they have to really rewrite their applications from the ground up. So they're a little bit more targeted in where they're going and what functionality is, and they are, you know, they're right behind the curve here on getting everything back up to par as it used to be with AX 2012 R3 and that, you know, the partner channel there. Some of the product highlights here. So again, the development on the Azure stack, and that does lead some new different ways of thinking Microsoft. Their usage of the Power BI is somewhat innovative, and it's causing you know, I think people to rethink how they're using dashboards and how they're using home pages within ERP. The Power BI is giving more analytics and more definition around those graphs and charts, but it is not fully embedded as it used to be within the system. For example, again, the dashboards and the home pages didn't rely on Power BI. So now you've got you know, maybe two different applications that are going into one, and Microsoft is, you know, is quickly making that look as seamless as possible. Microsoft puts a heavy focus on the technology stack, so they're, you know, they're not really highlighting what the D365 true capabilities are on its standalone by itself. They're highlighting the capabilities when these ERPs are integrated with their full technology stack. For example, Azure and the BI tool. And Microsoft still, again, relies heavily on the channel partners for that last mile of functionality. Again, they're developing it and they're recreating what they've done. Microsoft took a lot of that kind of standard IP and actually wrapped it in and baked it into their new product, which is great because it provides a lot more out of the box functionality than normal. And then as far as the customer experience, you know, and culture, they're again, they're a holistic vendor. Their approach is holistic, meaning, you know, the D365 enterprise application is one piece of the puzzle, in addition to the other applications and technologies that Microsoft develops that they worked hand in hand with. So they really take that approach, and they are very partner centric. We feel, you know, Microsoft obviously has is a big corporation, but they kind of have a boutique flair. The way that they go about their, you know, using their channel partners to help implement and also help sell the software. So it kind of gives you a, you know, a big company with a little bit of boutique feel when you're having some of those system integrators that are just not the, you know, the large guys out there. Next tier one vendor here for distribution is N4 and the N4 Cloud Suite distribution. N4 as a whole, you know, about a $3 billion company, still making, you know, leeway and lots of, gaining lots of market share in this cloud space as kind of one of the innovators from a cloud consolidation point. Their target, you know, the target market, again, here, 500 million and above. Do we see it in place in smaller ones? Absolutely. And can it scale up to multi-billion dollar organizations? Absolutely here. The Cloud Suite distribution is going to be a mix, again, of best practices. They've taken the LN product and they've put that into the cloud. They also have the M3 product that is now offered as a cloud service. So depending on what your needs are, and, you know, if you do have any manufacturing on top of your distribution, or kind of what technology and integrations and collaboration that you need, either LN or M3 is going to be a, you know, a very good product from N4. And then highlighting the product and the user interface from the Cloud Suite and M3 LN applications. You know, N4 again has their hook and loop team. If you've heard any of our other ERP webinar broadcasts, you've heard about the hook and loop team, excuse me, from N4. This hook and loop team is a conglomerate, a collaboration of really industry leaders, thought leaders within technology. So they pulled people from fashion, they pulled people from the music industry, entertainment industry, all sorts of different industries to help them really revamp the user interface and the user experience within their N4 products. So kind of a differentiator for them, and certainly making good traction in the market space here. They've got a full suite of solutions, meaning that a lot of this out of the box functionality, either LN or M3, is going to be take on a lot of complex requirements. They also have applications on top of that, such as supply chain management. The old GT Nexus group is part of that for full supply chain management capability. Things to consider when implementing or looking at the N4 product, the adoption of standard processes and functionality. We make sure that we're very selective in what we look at from advanced functionality and out-of-the-box functionality. N4 has done a great job of adopting and standardizing a lot of processes, and therefore reducing the implementation and configuration costs during an ERP implementation. But there are some trade-offs to that. So if you don't fit in their standard processes, there's a little bit more configuration that needs to be done. You just got to make sure that that you're lining up the proper requirements with what they're going to be selling you. And from a customer experience and culture, again, right on the forefront of N4 is the customer experience. So they want their customers to have a great experience. They want their customers to have a great experience. So that's what their focus is. Very relationship based, new and innovative approaches, such as their use of artificial intelligence. And a lot of these vendors have artificial AI applications, but N4 is really, it seems like the group that is really putting, I guess, the boots on the ground, and they're giving us actual case studies and examples of how artificial intelligence is coming into play on, in production environments and distribution environments. And then N4 also has influencer conferences, which we are privy to go to. And these are great because you're a little bit more intimate of a setting, and you get to talk to, management and C-level type people about their product roadmap and, where their true strengths are, where their weaknesses are. Very fitting for firms like us that are in selections and including N4 quite a bit. So now we're going to jump into the tier 2 vendors. And again, these vendors are vendors that are looking to target markets of 10 million up to $1 billion for their clients. So we'll go through each of these and get a little bit more granular. And the first one is Epicor, and the Epicor, the P21 product. Epicor themselves, just under $1 billion. They're still kind of reaping the benefits of the KKR private equity firm investment, which continues to pump in research and development funds into their product. Epicor has the ERP10, and then they also have P21. ERP10 is more for the manufacturing side, and P21 is for their distribution side. So very focused. A lot of I guess kind of terminology, industry terminology out of the box and whatnot for Epicor. Their target customer, 25 million and above. So can Epicor facilitate $1 billion company? Absolutely. But they're looking for companies that are, a little bit smaller, maybe coming off of a smaller ERP product that was limited in functionality. So usually target market about 25 million and up for Epicor. Some of the highlights here, and the user interface was a large focus in one of their, the recent major release. Historically, the P21 was a little bit clunky, a little bit, a lot of information was presented on the screen, may have confused some of the end users. So they really took on that as a challenge and revamped their user interface, and it went a long way. They made the screens a little bit more intuitive, less information being presented on the screens, but more of what is really necessary. And you can also customize it and personalize it as well. Epicor does take a mobile-first approach. So when they're introducing new products or they're doing upgrades, they're really keeping in, they're putting a focus on that end user, and whether that end user be on, in a warehouse, in the distribution environment itself, maybe they're a salesperson for wholesale distribution, and they're just in the field. They've taken all their applications and made them pretty much agnostic onto what device that they can be used on. So handheld, smart devices, smartphones, and even an iPad. Those type of devices are all easy and able to deploy through Epicor. Some of the considerations here is, additional functionality may be needed if your organization has, deep warehouse management, WMS, or transportation management requirements. You may need a third-party bolt-on, but typically, clients at that $25 million and up, they don't get into a whole bunch of deep complexity. The example would be directed voice put away. So once something is received, having a inventory or a warehouse worker actually get direction via an earpiece and verbal instructions on where to go. So that's kind of one example of some of the advanced functionality maybe not met there. From an experience and culture standpoint, Epicor very consistent across the platform in the way that they treat their resellers and the way that they interact with selection firms, outside consulting firms like us. They want to make it as consistent as possible. That way they have really consistent messaging going throughout the industry. And again, the ongoing benefits of the KKR investment, still raking the benefits there of large research and development funds there. And then again, influencer conferences and partners. Epicor has that similar setting for influencer conferences. People like us attending, getting great knowledge of product roadmaps and where they're truly going in their industry focus and whatnot. And then also updating the partners. The Epicor partners, it seems like they've kicked up their game quite a bit over the last couple of years. We've seen some of the leading VARs actually have hired in management and C-level suites resources from other larger firms like N4 and/or Oracle. So those VARs for Epicor are really ramping up, how they come to market with their solutions matched up with Epicor. It's pretty neat to see. Next tier 2 vendor for distribution here is IFS. And IFS is the most common ERP application that mostly nobody has ever heard of. I would say 9 out of 10 of our clients have never been exposed to IFS until they, go through the Panorama processes. They're about a $450 million company. They're Swedish, European, Swedish based, and they've got a lot of traction, a lot of user base, a high number of users in Europe, and very large, quickly growing market share here in the U.S. and North America in particular here. You can see their target market is about 200 million and above. IFS, they're right at the edge of upper tier 2, lower tier 1 type applications. So they are targeting a little bit larger enterprises, but right about the 200 million and above is kind of their sweet spot. The way that IFS is going to market with their cloud application is their application being hosted through the Azure platform, and it is hosted and managed through IFS. Some of the things that we're looking at here for IFS is one, full end-to-end application. IFS prides themselves on the lack of third-party applications or integrations that that they have or that are needed. They really try to develop everything out of the box. Their home pages, their user interface, they call them lobbies for the home pages. The general navigation is very intuitive, and it's very forward-thinking as well. IFS has had a somewhat similar looking user interface over the last handful of years, but really kind of was more forward-thinking than some of the other vendors out there. It's very easy to personalize and very strong in mobility as well. We see them play strong in the field service management type applications as well. Some of the considerations here is, IFS using the Oracle database and the technology. You are limited to that. So it does require different resources, and it may require, you know, a little bit of a different mindset of thinking using and leveraging that Oracle database. And then the customer experience and culture, we find that IFS is very relationship based, you know, really in it for the long term. The customers that we've worked with and our, you know, relationship one-on-one with IFS is very strong, and they certainly get the big picture, and that's what's most important to them in their relationships. They're very flexible on how they work, you know, on who's actually servicing your accounts and whatnot. And they're also not metric based. You know, obviously they have revenue and they have revenue goals and they're growing, but you know, they don't put a huge focus on quarter end business and year end business, meaning that, you know, they're really not pushing their customers and their prospects to bite off anything until everybody is very comfortable. Then moving on to the next tier 2 vendor, which is Sage, and you know, Sage Cloud, Sage Business Cloud Enterprise Management is the new rebranding for Sage X3. So that's always been their, you know, flagship ERP for large enterprise, or larger organizations. We put them as a tier 2 just because of the functionality is somewhat limited, and it's not really as in depth of a full enterprise type management application for, you know, consolidations, business intelligence, and artificial intelligence and whatnot. Sage, just over a $2 billion company. Sage itself, I don't know the exact number now, but you know, any given time they have anywhere from 15 to 30 different ERP systems that play in the small and mid-market space. And again, this the X3, the enterprise management, is the flagship of all of those. The target customer here typically is 250 million and above. Again, are they scalable and can you get in the door at a reasonable price point for a small organization? Absolutely, but we feel around 250 million is usually the target customer that Sage is looking for. And as far as their interface, always had a strong, intuitive, you know, simple to use interface. It's very important as you're going through, you know, your assessments of these different applications, that user interface, and really what it leads to is end user adoption and end user buy-in. So you really want something that is easy to use but provides the amount of depth and functionality that you need. Sage has always been very strong on the financial and the accounting side. You know, they pride themselves in their involvement on the involvement of CPAs in their product development for all of their products. And then the bang for the buck functionality. There is a lot of, for the price point of Sage Business Cloud Enterprise Management, there is a lot of functionality that you get here. Now, some of the considerations that you have to at least address for Sage when you're looking at them, similar to some of the other tier 2 type applications, but the additional functionality for you know, complex warehouse or transportation needs. They may need additional third-party applications or even some configuration customization to meet those complex needs. Again, you know, flushing out those needs and lining them up with the vendor's capability is very important. From an experience in culture, Sage has an emerging VAR channel, so it's the value-added resellers. You know, that's comparable to system integrators. Value-added resellers within the US, that channel is growing. It's been a little bit limited, and I think Sage kind of took a step back with who they actually wanted to sell their product, and they wanted to make sure all their VARs were fully certified and you know, give them the ability to give their clients a successful implementation. So they're still developing that VAR channel here in the US, and Sage is even taking on more work themselves. And then you know, larger corporation focus with some rebranding here. So, you know, again, if going from X3 to the enterprise management, they're just rebranding you know, that product. It really is the same set of functionality. And again, you know, this application is good for tier 2, maybe lower tier 1, larger corporation versus, you know, true enterprise type application. This is good for larger corporations. And now we're going to dive into these point solutions. So again, the point solutions are applications that are that can be used as a standalone or can be integrated with an ERP for full end-to-end functionality. These point solutions, again, typically will help kind of subsidize some of the lack of functionality within your ERP system. So depending on which system it is, you'll implement your ERP, you'll kind of grow into it, and then you'll find out what the limitations are. And then a group like JDA or Manhattan coming up could possibly come into play. So, just under $1 billion. So JDA is a very large company for the niche application that they are. Deep functionality in supply chain management, so processes, consulting, and software. And their target customer, typically, larger organizations, 500 million and above. Again, these are organizations that have complex supply chain management needs out of the gate, or they may have an ERP system that is not fully functional, and they need this to supplement some of those limitations there. And from a JDA standpoint, some of the product highlights, again, deep, rich supply chain management functionality and capability. Not all companies may need this right out of the gate, or if they're small, but as they grow, this is a good application to start to look on. Again, standalone functionality, but best suited and leveraged when it's integrated with an ERP system. And then the market focus, they are in supply chain management. They're not looking at other niche type. They're not looking to get into other applications. So it's a smaller focus, which allows them to spend more R&D, on a real targeted basis of what they need to improve within their solution set. And then some of the considerations, we have to, when you're looking at advanced functionality, you want to make sure you're being selective in the deployment of that functionality. All too often, these vendors and vendors, niche vendors like this and ERP vendors will oversell their functionality, and you may not need it, or you may not implement it. So you're not leveraging the system as its full capability. You want to look at what the benefits realization. So when we see organizations large and or small, if they really deem that they can get a lot of benefits out of replacing their either their WMS or their supply chain management application, usually these things are easier to implement, less risky, and less time consuming than full ERP applications. So you can see a little bit more early adoption of your benefits as you're going in implementing phases of the system. And then the advanced functionality that, again, typically supplements ERP shortcomings. So depending on, what level of ERP, you're going to have different limitations. This JDA application and the other applications we have for point solutions, can integrate with many, many different ERP applications. The next one on our list is Manhattan and Associates. You can see the size of the company, just over $500 million. Very viable. Again, we don't think Manhattan is going to be acquired by anybody, and their set of solutions is strong. They also have I think what differentiates Manhattan a bit is their consultative approach. So not only do they have these applications for WMS, transportation management, supply chain in general, but I think a lot of their applications are a result of their best practices in really consulting, consulting resources within the industry. Their target customer, again, 500 million and above. Again, larger organizations that have a little bit more complex needs. From a highlight standpoint, all of the Manhattan products are still being developed and researched and developed. They may not have as nice of a user interface as some of the applications, but we think that from a strong foundation of why these applications are built, they're built from process and industry experts. So we really think that deep functionality is a differentiator for them. the advanced technology that they build their platforms and the algorithms on the back end for replenishment and all the different applications that are to be used, analysis and predictive analytics from supply chain management. We feel Manhattan is a leader there. And again, their R&D is from an actual more of a technical consultative approach rather than just putting functionality in an application to have it there. Some of the consideration, adoption of the methods, so they are a little bit different of a vendor. You do need to be fully prepared when you have these types of organizations come in because they will send a group of people that are looking for answers and decisions. And if you're not prepared behind the scenes on what your actual processes are and where you've been, where you want to go, you need to be able to, you need to be pretty nimble with your preparedness when I guess addressing some of these consulting type groups. And then again, the advanced functionality, lots of deep, rich functionality that typically supplements the ERP shortcomings. And then the third point solution that we have here is ASC Software, and this is a much smaller group. We don't have the numbers of the revenue, but I imagine they're under 100 million in revenue as a vendor themselves. Their target market is a little bit on the smaller end. They don't have as much deep, rich functionality as a JDA or as a Manhattan, but they're very capable and very comparable. So smaller groups may find this a better fit because it's a little bit more streamlined of an implementation, a little bit less risk, and certainly cheaper than some of the other players that we have here. I just think there's a lot of good, great bang for the buck for your functionality at the cost point for ASC. And then some of their product highlights here, and we don't have as much, actual use and interaction with some of these point solutions as we do from the other ERP systems. So a little bit, limited or less exposure to them. But what we see is, is a lot of benefits for companies on the cusp of complexity. So companies that are in, hockey stick growth mode, maybe they're $1 million now looking at $10 million down the road. We find that this is a good application where people need to take advantage of rich functionality, but maybe not necessarily in a full end-to-end ERP system. So again, complex algorithms on the back end from industry experts. We spent a lot of time with their management and even owners over the years on where they come from and why they're there and what they're doing, why they're doing what they're doing. There's a lot of pre-configuration, meaning a lot of the terms and data fields that are in ASC software are pretty industry specific. So users, when they're visualizing how it's going to be used, can start to adopt it a little bit quicker. And then some of the considerations, we think they're an innovative boutique vendor that will have end-to-end functionality. So they're introducing, full financial capability as well. But we, kind of put boutique vendor in here again because they're a smaller firm and they're just more personable, and it's more of an intimate experience with these guys and some of the other vendors out there. Your size of your company and the size of their company, along with the functionality that they have, could mean that they would be a possible acquisition target, for a larger vendor like an N4 or maybe an Oracle, something like that. They have a lot of, they're a smaller company, a lot of good functionality, rich, functionality within the software. So that does make them a possible acquisition for a larger vendor down the road. So that was the report in a nutshell here. We've got some questions coming in. Before we go there, I want to take the opportunity to tell you again, here's how we qualify for the free 1 hour of consulting. Just make sure to go to the comments section within the contact us page within the Panorama website, and then the comments section, and you can apply for that free 1 hour of consulting. So a couple of questions here with the time being. And the first one here is, do these tier 1 vendors have tier 2 product offerings? Absolutely, yes. So for the purposes here, we've highlighted SAP, Oracle, N4, and Microsoft as tier 1 and their respective products. But yes, each of these applications have different level offerings. For example, SAP has Business One, and that fairly limited in functionality, but for smaller groups. Microsoft has the new Business Central, which is the old Navision NAV platform. So yeah, each of these vendors have multiple product offerings. If you don't fall into that tier 1, organization, usually they're going to have something that would be compatible or viable for you. Next one, where does WMS, warehouse management systems, come into play for the tier 2 vendors? So a lot of these tier 2 vendors, like the Epicor or the Sage, they're going to have pretty rich functionality out of the box. They also have more customization capabilities as well. They also have preferred partners that they work with. So I used that example of the directed put away, or maybe the voice picking earlier. That's a good example of systems. That functionality may not be right out of the box for tier 2 vendors, but most of these vendors have a preferred partner that they work with that'll offer deep, deep integration, deep functionality, and they've already kind of done projects together. So enhancing that, that tier 2 type application with a WMS or with a transportation management application, quite common. Again, you just want to make sure that you have all the integrations laid out, and you want to make sure that you've really exhausted the out of the box functionality. So it looks like we're running up on time here. There's a small handful of questions. If you do have other questions, please submit them on the website. You can see Laura's contact information here. Laura Florence is the Director of Business Development here. You can submit them to her, and we'll make sure to get those questions answered for you. Again, thank you very much for joining. This has been Panorama Consulting Solutions Top 10 ERP Report for Distribution. Thank you.